Mr. President, just last week, the Republican-controlled Congress ran through a budget with the sole purpose of allowing Republicans to enact a tax plan that will take money from working Americans and put it into the pockets of giant corporations and wealthy individuals. The following week, they killed an important rule that would have made it easier for Americans to hold big banks and corporations accountable when they lie, cheat, and steal from working families. There have been countless stories of the Trump administration in disarray, juicy rumors of distrust and division between and among congressional Republicans and the White House, reports of Republicans' inability to advance key parts of their agenda. But that is only half the story. The other terrifying half is this. Since day one of this administration, President Trump and congressional Republicans have been working hard to make government work better and better for the rich and the powerful. And while they have fumbled on their legislative agenda, they have been quietly working to help powerful interests capture our courts. Now, that shouldn't come as a surprise. For decades, those powerful interests have poured eye-popping amounts of cash into electing politicians who will promote their interests in Washington. They have hand-picked politicians who will enact laws that will make it easier for corporations to abuse their workers or cheat their customers or make an extra buck, and make it harder for agencies to hold them accountable for wrongdoing. They have executed a well-funded campaign to rig the rules of the game so that the powerful always come out on top and the people come out on the bottom. And they know that the courts are the place where they can shape the law for decades to come. Most Americans already know that while we have one set of laws on the books, we really have two different judicial systems. One justice system is for the rich and the powerful. In that system, government officials fret about being too tough on white-collar crime. So wealthy individuals or giant corporations that break the law walk away with a small fine and a pinky promise not to do it again. And when those executives break that promise, they get second, third, and 23rd chances. Every time they get caught, the cycle repeats. The corporation pays the fine, says some magic words, and everyone goes right back to breaking the law. The second justice system is for everyone else. In that system, tough on crime is the name of the game. People are locked up long before they go to trial because they don't have the money for bail. Individuals who commit minor, nonviolent offenses are slapped with long prison sentences. And even after they serve those sentences and are released, they are branded with a scarlet letter that creates barriers to employment, to housing, and to opportunity. That second justice system even traps families and children and elderly parents whose families are blown apart and whose communities are destroyed. That second justice system has earned America the dubious title of holding the world's highest incarceration rate. Despite having less than 5% of the world's population, the U.S. holds more than 20% of the world's incarcerated population. Russia, China, North Korea, they don't even come close, not only in raw numbers, but in the percentage of their population behind bars. America's legal system is great at locking people up, but terrible at doing what it's supposed to do, dispensing equal justice under law. Those words, equal justice under law, are etched into the front of the Supreme Court. If we truly believe those words, we need to start making some changes. And in recent years, we've seen some progress. Some state and local governments have made real efforts to reduce crime and lower incarceration rates. Massachusetts is one of the states leading the way, with elected officials in both parties debating transformative changes to the judicial system aimed at replacing this tough-on-crime policies with smart-on-crime policies. The call for reform also extends to corporate crime. Public outrage at corporate greed has created pressure to hold the rich and the powerful a little more accountable. But President Trump is committed to reversing that trend. He's working hand in hand with this Republican Congress to ensure that the rich get to play by their own set of rules, while everyone else gets crushed under the awesome power of law enforcement. This week will be a big step forward for the two-part justice system, as this Senate prepares to hand lifetime appointments to 4 judges whose careers make it clear that they have no interest at all in fixing our broken justice system. So let's just take a look at their records. Colorado Supreme Court Justice Allison Ide, who was nominated to serve on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, has used her power as a state Supreme Court justice to shield corporations from accountability. She has voted to make it harder for individuals to bring class action lawsuits against huge corporations that break the law. Sound familiar? Mrs. Ide would fit right in with the Senate Republicans who just voted to make it easier for big banks and financial institutions to cheat people and walk away scot-free. Ms. Ide also voted to deny workers' compensation to an employee who was injured at work because, get this, he was injured at work and the person was knocked unconscious and couldn't remember the details of what happened. So Ms. Ide said, that means there's going to be no liability here. This kind of blocking and tackling for powerful companies that hurt consumers and workers should be embarrassing. With this president and this White House, though, it buys a lifetime appointment to the federal bench to shield corporations from the law on an even bigger stage. Ms. Ide is not the only nominee up for consideration who would leave working Americans out in the cold. Michigan Supreme Court Justice Joan Larson, who's been nominated to serve on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, voted again and again to block injured plaintiffs from having their cases heard. Giant companies and millionaires liked her so much that they spent over $500,000 to get her elected to the Michigan Supreme Court. And why wouldn't they? Now she's going to be elevated to a lifetime appointment on the federal bench. And that's a pretty good return on their investment. Yes, these judicial nominees have bent over backwards to help the wealthy and well-connected escape accountability. But that is only half the story. Trump nominees have a very different view of what justice means for individuals who lack the money or the resources to pay high-powered legal teams or to pay political campaigns to influence judge decisions and judge selection. This week, the Senate will also vote on the nomination of Stefanos Bibos to sit on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Mr. Bibos worked as a federal prosecutor in Manhattan. Now, you think there would be plenty of work for a federal prosecutor with oversight of Wall Street and all of the other corporate executives in New York City. Well, you'd think that, but you'd be wrong. Mr. Bibos' most famous case involved prosecuting a 51-year-old woman accused of stealing $7 from the cash register at her cafeteria job. That's right. While going to work every day in the shadow of Wall Street, Mr. Bibos decided that it was the best use of his time and federal government resources to pursue a $7 case. He eventually lost the case, but not before the woman lost her job. And then there's Amy Coney Barrett, the President Trump's nominee for the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, she has also taken a throw-the-book-at-them approach to crime, at least to not white-collar crime. She believes that the Miranda Doctrine, which protects criminal defendants from coercive police tactics, is not required by the Constitution. And she's criticized efforts to reverse the damage done by the sentencing disparity between powder and crack cocaine, a disparity that has been rightly criticized by Republicans, Democrats, religious leaders, civic leaders across this country as rooted in a long history of racial disparities in law enforcement. We have two justice systems in America, one for the rich and powerful and one for everyone else. Part of the way we fix that problem is by making sure that we put judges on the federal bench who are fair, impartial, and committed to dispensing equal justice under the law. Fair and impartial judges are supposed to stand up for justice when prosecutors try to ruin someone's life over allegedly grabbing $7 from the cash register. They're supposed to stand up for justice when consumers and workers seek a day in court against giant companies who injured them. But the judges before the Senate this week, they don't stand up for justice. Instead, they stand up for the powerful against the people who desperately need someone who will be fair even to those who don't have money. These nominees are right at home in Washington's rigged system. They are judges who will continue to apply one set of rules for the rich and powerful and an entirely different set of rules for everyone else. It is no wonder that Americans are so angry with Washington. They have had it up to their eyeballs with bought and paid for politicians who spend more time catering to their wealthy benefactors than promoting the interests of constituents back home. They are tired of giant corporations getting a slap on the wrist for massive wrongdoing, while people from their hometowns linger in prison for minor crimes. They know that the legal system is deeply unjust and badly broken. It is up to us, to every member of this chamber, to fix that broken system. Rejecting judicial nominees who will make it worse is a really good first step. That's not just the right thing to do, it's what the American people sent us here to do.